ओम ज्ञानतिमिरन्धस्य ज्ञानाञ्जनशलाकाय चक्षुरुन्मिलितं येन तस्मै श्रीगुरवे नमः। नमः ओं विष्णुपादाय कृष्णपृष्ठाय भूतले श्रीमते भक्तिवेदान्त स्वामी इति नामिने। नमस्ते सारस्वती देवे गौरवाणी प्रचारिणे निर्विशेष शून्यवादी पाश्चात्य देशतारिणे वाञ्छाकल्पतरुभ्यश्च कृपा सिन्धुभ्य एव च पतितानां पावनेभ्यो वैष्णवेभ्यो नमो नमः। जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्रीवासादि गौर भक्तवृंद। हरे कृष्णा 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 हरे हरे, हरे राम 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 हरे हरे। हरे कृष्णा। Am I audible to everyone behind? How many people behind can't hear me? Good. So I'll speak today on the topic of the importance of being mindful. Be mindful or your mind will make you a fool. So there are broadly two kinds of people in the world. There are some people who are wise, and there are some people who are otherwise. And it is not just that there are these two kinds of people. If you look at we ourselves, we are sometimes wise and sometimes otherwise, and we keep oscillating. Now, especially if we have to give advice to others, sometimes we are amazed at the kind of pearls of wisdom that come out of our mouth. But then when we are provoked, at that time we might get so agitated. We may speak certain things and afterwards we wonder, who is this person? And that can't be me. I could have spoken like this. So this inner oscillation, that is one of the main things that actually inspired me on my spiritual exploration. Started off about 25 years ago. So I was in my third year of engineering, and at that time I was doing an experiment in the lab, and suddenly a friend told me, hey, there's wildlife on your body. Now, he was behind me, and even before I understood what was going on, I immediately said, don't hurt it. And I looked around and I saw there was a small insect crawling on my shirt. So then I gently put my finger over there next to the insect. The insect crawled on it, and I went to a nearby window and I let it out of the window. And my friend, I looked at him and he was looking at me with broad, big, bemused eyes. And some of those eyes stuck in my memory. And then that evening, we were in our mess, making a mess. Not really, we were a mess eating food. And at that time, he told me something which enraged me. We had been in a project together and something had got lost. And he had made me believe that I had lost it, whereas actually he had lost it. So when he told me this, I felt so angry. I just jumped up from the side of the table where I was sitting and I raised my fist. Said, I will kill you. And when I spoke that, he just was so shocked that his eyes immediately opened wide. And somehow, when those eyes opened wide, they reminded me of the day of the incident earlier that day. It's almost as if I had like a out of body experience, not literally but conceptually. It was almost as if I was below and I was also looking from above. I was looking at myself, at this person who was angry, and then I was also thinking of the same person earlier in the day who had been so calm and gentle. So I started thinking, which is the real me? Is this the short-tempered, near violent person? Or is that calm, gentle person? And that thought just consumed me. So I have to really understand who I am. That's the time I started reading books more on psychology, on philosophy, on spirituality. And eventually I came to an understanding. Gradually, through this incident, I came to an understanding of the self based on the Bhagavad Gita. So I'll try to share that understanding in three broad parts today. I'll first talk about what is the mind. Then, second part, I'll talk about how the mind works against us, how the mind malfunctions, how it makes us otherwise. And then the last part I'll discuss is how to get the mind to work for us instead of against us. So let's begin. What is the mind? Okay, throughout the session, if at any time anything is not clear, feel free to raise your hands and ask questions. And I'll also feel free to not answer them. Not really, I'll answer them. But what I mean is that if the question is not immediately relevant to the topic, or if the question is going to be answered a little later, I may not answer it immediately. But if anything is not clear, please let me know. Okay. So the Bhagavad Gita offers us a 3-level model of the self. If we consider self, a 3-level, there is the body, there is the mind, and then there is the soul. And this can be compared to the hardware, software, and user in a computer system. So the body is like the hardware, the mind is the software, and the soul is the user. Now, within this understanding of the self, the mind acts as a vital link. The mind is necessary for us to function. It's a vital link between us and the physical world, the body and the physical world. So basically, let me expand on this model a little bit. So if we consider the soul, mind, body, and then we have the outer world. So how do we function? Basically, from the soul, consciousness comes out as a stream and it goes to the outer world. So this is consciousness. Consciousness is Chaitanya. Now, if you consider this phone, now here there is a flashlight. So here there is a light source. The light source is the soul. And the beam of light coming out from it is consciousness. Now, if say my palm is like this, Can you see the light? You can, to some extent. Now, if it becomes like this, you see it lesser. If it becomes like this, you can't see it at all. So this pathway through which the beam of light is coming out, that pathway is the mind. So the mind is the channel through which consciousness comes out into the outer world. So we could say the soul is the root of consciousness. Root means source. And the mind is the root of consciousness. Here it is the pathway, the passage through which consciousness comes. One of my friends is a pilot. And now, as airplanes are becoming more and more sophisticated, he says that they have to rely much more on instruments than on their own eyes. So, for example, a plane is going very fast. So now, what is the nature of the weather around, obstacles nearby, hazards? They can't really see much with their eyes. So the plane has its hardware sensors, and the plane has its software. Now the software integrates the input from the sensors and presents it on the panels. Okay, there is a fog over here, or there is a storm over here. And sometimes if you're traveling in the plane, they say, turbulence ahead, fasten your seat belts, return back to your seats. You can't use the restrooms now. How do they know that? It is not when they hit the turbulence. Even before that it tells them. Now, just as the software integrates the inputs from the hardware and presents them to the person for observing. So similarly, the mind integrates the inputs. In the 15th chapter, no, can you take them from behind? So the mind integrates the inputs from the various places. So if you could consider, maybe say a control center, where sometimes you have seen these big buildings, they may have one security center or the control center, and all the various doorways. So what happens is, there are multiple windows on the screen. Has any of you seen mainframe laptops like this? Computers with multiple inputs? Maybe in hospitals they have it. Has anyone seen like this? The security. Okay, this door somebody is coming in, this door somebody is coming in, this door something is happening. So now, depending on, all these panels are open. If somebody comes in with a gun, say you see somebody suspicious over here, then what happens is, that window zooms out. That window will become big and all the other windows will become small. So like that, just now when he was clicking these photos, then that window, you're hearing me, I'm also speaking to you, but he's here, that window pops out. So then, and that window pops out, then that becomes prominent in our consciousness. So now I acted as if I was annoyed. So now what is happening is, when one window, so if I had got annoyed, if I had got angry, then that window is not only zoomed out, it stays zoomed out. And then, okay, it's a small thing, but it becomes very big in my mind. And if I get disturbed, then I'm not able to focus. I may forget what am I supposed to speak, or what am I even doing. So basically, the mind is supposed to act as an instrument which brings information from outside and presents it to us. So this is the first understanding. And I'm leading first point. What is the mind? The mind is essentially a tool for perception, for information gathering, for us to understand what is happening, because many things are happening at one time. So right now you're hearing me speak, you're also seeing. Maybe you're also sensing that you're sitting on the floor and maybe the floor is a little hard. Maybe you need a backrest, you're not comfortable. There are many things going on. Many information are coming in from various sensory pathways. And you're observing them. But you decide which you want to focus on. So when the mind malfunctions, so I'm going to the second part now. When the mind malfunctions, when the mind starts working against us, the mind can do two things. It can distract and it can distort. Two things, distract and distort. Distract means I need to be focusing on one thing. So a thief is coming in from one window, but then maybe I see my friend chatting and joking on some other window. And I think, oh, what joke is there? I also want to hear about that joke. And I start thinking about that. That window zooms out. And then what happens? When the thief is coming in, we forget that. So distraction. But now distraction is a huge problem in today's world. And distraction is caused not just by the presence of outer distracting objects, but it is caused more by the distractibility of our mind. So distractibility of our mind means that the mind starts getting caught up in something other than what is important. So the mind is, now why does the mind distract like this? So I talked about this mind as a route of consciousness. So we have the mind, the soul, and the body. So I said consciousness goes outwards, and when consciousness gains information, then consciousness comes back inwards. And that's how we perceive things. So the mind is, in this case, you could say, it is meant to be a transmitter. But it is not merely a transmitter of information. The mind has its own impressions inside it. And these impressions in Sanskrit are called samskar. Now, everybody has some scar. Everybody's mind is scarred in some way. So we all have some samskars. And because of that, we all may get distracted by different things, depending on what is there in our mind as an impression. Say, now for example, all of you need to be lauded, praised, appreciated. You have resisted a major distraction for coming here today. What is the distraction? Sorry? No, but specifically today? Yes, India. Yeah. I think, thank you for coming in spite of that. I think all of you can applaud yourself and applaud each other for coming. So it's a distraction. Now, when I travel to America, whenever I try to share spirituality, I try to give contemporary examples. But when I go to America, at least when I started going in 2014, 2015, in the first years, my organizers would tell me that don't give any cricket examples. I said, why? I said, because for Americans, cricket is an insect, not a game. You know the insect cricket? So hardly any Americans play cricket. So when we use the word cricket, in their mind, an insect comes in. So what are you talking about an insect? Somebody's playing cricket. Oh, how do you play cricket? How do you play with an insect? What do you do? So the point I'm making is, if there is a cricket match that is going on, an American may not get distracted because there is no samskar there. But for an Indian, cricket is a national obsession. So cricket means sarva dharman parityajya. Just forget everything. I want to watch this cricket match. So why is that? Because there are impressions inside. So while information is going outward, consciousness is going outward to gather information. So at that time, there are many things which we could see. But we focus on certain things. What are the things we focus on? That is determined by the samskaras within us. Say, for example, going back to the same point. So this is the outer world. Now, say somebody is an alcoholic. So they have impressions of drinking within them. So when they go out, maybe they go into a hostel to stay. And when their consciousness is going outward, it can go straight outward. But the first thing they will look for is, okay, here is a bar. Here is a pub. So as soon as they get there, somebody may travel from India to America, but as soon as they get to America, they will ask, where's the pub? I want to drink. And that is not a water drink, it's an alcoholic drink. So why? Because our samskars, the impressions within us, cause that distraction. So which direction our consciousness will go, that depends on what impressions are. If somebody is not an alcoholic, they have no impressions of that sort within them. They may not even look for an alcoholic bar, and even if they see it, it won't register in their mind. I don't care about it. So we all have certain impressions with us. Some people may get very distracted by food. Some people may get distracted by movies. Some people may get distracted by politics. Some people may get distracted by this, that. There are hundreds of distractions. But hundreds of distractions don't distract us equally. So that depends on what kind of impressions are there. So our outward information gathering itself is distracted by the kind of conditionings, impressions, samskars that are there within us. And what I said, the mind malfunctions in two ways, two Ds I mentioned. One was distract. Do you remember the other one? Distort. Thank you. So you are not distracted. Good. So now, distort. Now, what does distort mean? Distort means that something might be big and we see it as small. Distort. Distort means basically to change the shape, to change the size. Or something might be small and we might see it as big. So both of these are distortions. That basically to see something as different from what it is. So we might all get distracted. Say, for example, say you have an important exam coming up. And then you get the news. Your friend has updated their Facebook profile. You get a notification. Now you may think, okay, what photo has he put? I want to find out. What photo have they put? Now, but you say, okay, I have an exam now. I'll look at it afterwards. It's not urgent. So then that's fair enough. That notification came up, but not every notification needs to be noticed. And certainly not every notification needs to be noticed immediately. But if we are very attached to that, then, hey, what photo have they put? I just want to see it right away. You know, my studying for the exam is important. No, I want to see it right away. So distort means something which is not very important, that becomes extremely important. Or conversely, suppose, say, we have an important meeting and we need to prepare for that meeting. Yeah, I'll prepare later. It's no big deal. I'll prepare later. I'll prepare later. So when we think like that, something which is important, we are devaluing it. So in general, the Bhagavad Gita talks about distorters as three distorters: lust, anger, and greed. Kama, Krodha, and Lobha. It talks about this in the 16th chapter, 16:21. And it says, what do these three things do? They distort our perception. Say, for example, going back to the starting incident which I mentioned. So, yes, what my friend had done was wrong. He had let me take the fall for something that he had done. And it was understandable that I would get annoyed, I would get angry. But for me to raise my fist and be about to smash him and to say, I will kill you, of course, I wouldn't have done that. But even to say those words, that was an overreaction. It's all happened. But when anger comes up inside us, anger makes us think, I have to put this person in that place right now. I have to show my power to this person. I have to crush this person. And other things, where am I right now? Should I be conducting myself in this way right now? What about people? Maybe I should do this privately. What about my relationship? Is crushing this person more important, or is my friendship with the person more important? So when anger comes up, it distorts our perception. What it does is, this is what is important, and everything else, forget it. There was in Russia, there was an anti-alcohol campaign. So Russian alcohol is known by a particular name. Does anyone know? Yeah? Vodka. Okay. How do you know? Okay. You could ask me, how do I know? Well, I have Russian friends who used to drink it quite a lot previously. But anyway, so there was this ad which shows a family at home, they're watching TV, and on the TV the news comes. The prices of vodka have skyrocketed. They have shot up. And the father is drinking a bottle of vodka. And then there is the son who is timidly asking his father, Dad, now the prices have increased. Will you drink less? The father says, no, you will eat less. Now, is my drinking, what kind of parenting is that? What kind of father is that? That for my drinking, I will starve my son. No sane or civilized person would want to do this. But when a person is addicted, what happens is distortion. Something less important becomes more important. Something more important becomes less important. So lust is not just sexual craving. Lust can be craving of any kind. There can be lust for alcohol. There can be lust for so many things like that. So these are the two ways in which our mind malfunctions. So say when we get depressed, for example. So something goes wrong in our life. And that just happens. Life is like that. See, in general, if we consider the external and the internal. So in the external, there is always going to be up and down. Sometimes good things will happen. Sometimes bad things will happen to us. Kabhi khushi, kabhi gum. So that's just the way life is. Now, for some people, when this happens, internally for them, it is like when something good happens, they go way up, and they go way down. Everything becomes exaggerated. Oh, if somebody gets a new job and their boss speaks a nice, kind word to them. Oh, I love this job. This is the best job in the world. And the next day, the boss gives them some feedback. And when they get feedback, their feet go back. Say, what a terrible job. I hate this. Why did I even take this job? This fickleness can be with respect to job. It can even be with respect to relationships. Now, one day a person say, I love you. I can't live without you. The next day, I can't live with you. I hate you. Just go to the other extreme. So in this way, the outer ups and downs are unavoidable. But the outer ups and downs, they can lead to very exaggerated emotions. So huge up and a huge down. That's bad enough. But what can be worse is, you go up, you go down and stay down only. Even if something good is happening afterwards, that person doesn't care, stay down. So this is where depression starts happening. Now here what is happening? One bad thing happened, or maybe 2-3 bad things happened, but they become so big in one's mind that everything else is forgotten. This good thing happened, I also did this good thing. That just doesn't register. So this is very dangerous. Now, so for example, if you look at this downward journey, the mind's distortions we are talking about. So for example, something goes wrong in our life. We may say, I have lost. Yeah, I wanted to crack this interview, but I got cracked by the interview. I have lost. Okay, that's fair enough. That's reasonably objective. Objective means it's just assessment. We all may lose in life. But then we may say, I am lost. I don't even know what I should do. Should I apply for another interview? Should I just change my career? Should I just do something else? I'm lost. So you say, I am lost is much more discouraging than this, I have lost. Isn't it? But even worse can be, I am a loser. Now when I say, I am a loser, what is happening is, this is highly subjective, and it is not just subjective, it is destructive. We are not losers, we have lost. We all lose at times. Life is like that. I mean, sometimes 2-3 losses may come in a series, but that's okay. We can still bounce back. But when the mind just takes the negative and exaggerates the negative, then we start identifying ourselves. And this distortion is extremely dangerous. This is where a person may, even if they go further downwards, they may start thinking of suicide. If I'm a loser, then why should I even live? So we need to make sure that our mind does not distort. That if it distorts too much, it can be destructive. So that brings us to the conclusion, second part. So the second part was, how does the mind work against us? Now I'll go to the third part. Does anyone remember what is the third part? Yes, how to get the mind to work for us instead of against us. So Arjuna asked this question to Krishna in the Bhagavad Gita. There are many places where the Gita talks about the mind. One of the most revealing sections is in the 6th chapter, 633, 34, 35, and 36. So 33 and 34 is Arjuna's question. Arjuna says the mind is very difficult to control. And 35, 36 is Krishna's answer. So this is chapter 6 in the Bhagavad Gita. So I'll focus on the 35th verse. Arjuna says the mind is very difficult to control. And Krishna agrees. He says, Asamshayam mahabaho mano durnigraham chalam. Durnigraham. It's very difficult to control. Chalam, it's restless. But then he says, Abhyasena tu kaunteya vairagyena chagam. So I'll explain these 2 points, Abhyas and Vairagya, in terms of 2 Ds. So this whole session, you can remember it in terms of 4 Ds. The first 2 Ds were distraction and distortion. So now the 2 Ds which are a part of the solution are distance and diligence. Distance is Vairagya. I'll explain what it means. And diligence is Abhyasa. So let's look at what this means, distance. So the key thing is that we need to be able to create a distance between us and our triggers. Triggers are, what do you mean by triggers? Things that lead to either distraction, that are associated with distraction or distortion. So like for somebody who's an alcoholic, the sight of alcohol is a trigger. For somebody who's a cricket fan, cricket news is a trigger. So whenever there are triggers, there's distraction with respect to information going outward. We focus on, our attention just goes, it gets dragged towards certain things. And when coming inside, there are small things, they are made very big. So there are triggers for all of us. So when we understand that something is a trigger, we need to create a distance between us and that trigger. So we can talk about it at multiple levels, but let's focus on 2 things. I'll talk about an internal distance and external distance. So what is an external distance? So if this is the sense object, which is a trigger for us, and then this is the sense. Okay. It is the, let's call it senses. It's one sense, but the senses often take away our sense, our intelligence. Now beyond that, of course, there is the mind and other things are there, the soul. But right now, let's focus on this part. And this is the self. So the senses are there. So what we need to do is create some kind of barrier, a barrier or a boundary between us and the triggering objects. Suppose somebody is an alcoholic and they want to recover from their alcoholism. They may say, I want to give up alcohol. Okay, good. But if their house is nice, right next to a bar, then what will happen? If the house is next to a bar, then there will be no bar to their relapse. There's no bar to their drinking. Because everybody has moments of weakness. And in those moments of weakness, if the object is very easily available for us, then it can be dangerous. So some people have their house next to a bar. Some people have a bar in their house itself. Isn't it? And they will say, oh, it's not for me, it's for my guests. Yes, there is a guest who will come, not outside you, will come inside you. That is your own samskar will rise. Yeah, I want to drink, right? Forget it. So they need to create a distance. Okay. No, I clear out all alcohol from the house. And it may require some physical effort. Relocate to some other place. Now, this is not the final solution, of course. But this is a vital first step. Tasmatvam indriyanya adau niyamya bharatarshava. Krishna says we need external regulation. So whatever be our trigger, we create some barriers. So if we find that we spend too much time on our devices, maybe there's one particular app or one particular site on which we spend a lot of time, then get some filter apps, get some app regulating features, and then, okay, I want to be on social media for 15 minutes. Okay, that's enough. Then I get immediately an alert. And then alert is not enough. Maybe if you go 30 minutes, it just blocks the app. So now this kind of external aids can be very helpful. And one of the most powerful aids is a barrier is naturally created by association. If we have good association, if we are hanging out with people who, suppose somebody is an alcoholic and they are hanging out with people who don't drink, then that itself will create a barrier. Hey, maybe I shouldn't drink. So good association does much more than that. But vairagya is distance. Create a distance between us and triggering objects. So if whatever be our particular trigger, say if we know that there is one and the second person said, you exist. Now, the second person was not actually saying it in a arrogant or sarcastic or dismissive. He says, I just don't know. He says, just the way you laugh, the way you talk, the sound of your voice, the way your hair is, the way your clothes are. I don't know why. Just as soon as I see you, I feel angry. Now, we could say that it is not the second person's fault. But the first person was saying, I just don't know. Just feel angry as soon as I see you. If that is the case, it's not the problem of that person. But it is no point in blaming ourselves. Why am I like this? If I'm like this, then if I'm going to meet this person, maybe let me not meet with that person in private alone. If I'm in public, at least that being in public will create some restraint. Or if I want to meet that person, let me meet that person with some other friend whom I respect and whose respect I also want. So then in that case, that friend will act as a restraint. So depending on our particular situation, we need to create a distance. Distance between us and the object that triggers us. Can we decrease? I'll switch it off. This has become a trigger for me now. So now there is external distance, but we can also create an internal distance. Internal distance means that I understand that I am not my mind. This distance we can try to increase. So remind ourselves, I am not my mind. What this means is every desire inside me is not my desire. Or every emotion inside me is not my emotion. So this requires some level of inner awareness, some self-awareness. And this is where the philosophy of the Bhagavad Gita can be very helpful. It helps us understand that there is this mind inside me and it is not me. It is different from me. This is where often meditation, when we do mantra chanting, this can also be very helpful. Because at that time, when we try to chant, I sit down to do some japa, and there is something within me which just, okay, let's look at my phone. Let's look at this. Let's look at that. No, I don't want to look at it. But no, look at it right now. So we become very clearly aware that there is something inside me that is not me. So when we understand this, we become more alert. We become more careful. This internal distance, sometimes it happens automatically. Like I mentioned, when I was about to hit my friend, that I felt as if I was looking at myself from above. So that was like inner observation, inner distance happened. Who is this person? What is this person doing? So sometimes if we can create this inner distance, that's very helpful. So Krishna recommends this in 6.5 and he says, elevate yourself with your mind. Don't degrade yourself with your mind. So one way to create this distance is by having self-awareness questions. One of the most powerful ways of managing our mind. Sometimes I just have to control my mind. Well, yes and no. Yeah, we need to control it, but it's not so simple. It's control means don't think about this, don't desire this, don't feel like this. But in mind management, instead of seeking control, we can focus on curiosity. What is the difference? Control is good, but curiosity is much better. What do I mean by curiosity? Say, for example, I'm just sitting down and maybe I'm studying, and suddenly the thought comes, I want to eat some food. And when thought comes, and then suddenly I start thinking, okay, let me eat, and I start eating. Or say we may be sitting and maybe just talking with some friends, and suddenly he comes, oh, I want to watch this movie. Now, okay, it's going to be in 2-3 hours. Do I really have the time? Is that important? Maybe I have other things to do. But when the thought comes up, immediately we might act on it. So what we need to do is create inner distance. This self-awareness. So one of the easiest ways to create this inner distance is instead of saying to ourselves, don't do this, just ask questions to yourself. So self-awareness questions, 3 questions are very simple and very helpful. What am I doing? Why am I doing? How am I doing? What, why, how? So for example, right now you might be sitting here and you might feel a little tired and this class has gone on for a long time. It's a lot for my mind to churn on. I'm getting intellectual indigestion. So, okay, I just want to break now. Okay, that's fair enough. And the mind will start thinking, okay, maybe after this there's going to be food. What is there in the food? When can I eat the food? And all those thoughts are coming in. Now you may say, no, don't think about this, focus. And my mind says, I don't care. This is too much. It's too much analysis, too much trouble for me. But then instead of saying, don't do this, don't think about that. Okay, what am I doing? Okay, I'm here trying to understand some wisdom that can help me become a better person. I want to learn. I'm here to learn what the Bhagavad Gita speaks. I'm here to understand how my mind works. So what am I doing? Just asking a question, it automatically pushes us or raises us to the level of the observer. It's like, say, I am here and my mind is inside me, you can say. And the mind is pushing me in a particular direction. Maybe, let's put it this way, the mind is pushing me in an unhealthy direction. So, the mind's push is there. And if we say, no, don't go in that direction, that is difficult. But instead, what we do is, we just push ourselves up. We observe ourselves from above. Just asking, what am I doing? That question itself raises us above. And then after that, okay, why am I doing this? Because I feel that there's so much improvement. For example, what am I doing? I am learning the Bhagavad Gita. Why am I doing this? Because I feel the Bhagavad Gita can improve the quality of life. Because the Bhagavad Gita can help me live more meaningfully. Because it can help me to better deal with my problems. It can help me win against my inner demons. Whatever it is, why am I doing? That further creates a distance. Okay, let me look down now. What am I doing? Why am I doing? How am I doing? Yeah, I was attentive for the first 15 minutes, but now I'm getting a little distracted. Okay, yeah, this class is not going to go on forever. But 10, 15 minutes more. I think I can focus for 10, 15 minutes. So what am I doing? Why am I doing? How am I doing? These three questions are very simple questions to ask. But asking them will significantly create a distance between us and our mind. The mind is saying, come on, eat this, watch this, touch this, do that. Okay, stop. So in fact, you could even plan your life in such a way that maybe the technology can distract us, but technology can also be used as a tool for reminding us. Now, maybe every 3-4 hours, just take a pause. Take a pause and ask yourself these questions. Or maybe at the end of the day, you do that. So this is where, what are we doing? We are creating distance. So I said there were 4 Ds. The third D was distance. Remember the last D? Yes, diligence. So diligence. How many of you had heard of this word diligence before this class? Okay. So I need more diligence in my word choice then. I need to be more. So diligence, another way to put it is simply persistence. Have you heard this word persistence? Okay, how many of you heard the word persistence? Okay, much more. Well, I have to persist more to find another word then. Okay. Okay, let's put it in play. Okay, it's not sticking. It can mean sticking to something or pushing on in something. When we start something, we continue it. So you could use another word is determination for it. Determination, everybody knows, isn't it? So it's determination, but it's slightly different. Determination is more internal. Diligence is more in terms of action. So here, this is the concluding point. And I would say, even if you forget everything from this session, just understand this point. It will be very helpful. See, the mind is a programmed device. I earlier said that there are some samskaras inside us, that the impressions are there. So those impressions are like a programming. And the key thing to change, if you want to change the programming, is that it is not just program, it is programmable. We can program it again. And the way the programming works is primarily by repetition. Repetition means that whatever we do again and again and again, that becomes an impression inside the mind. Have any of you heard of this thing? So it's quite close to us from here. So now suppose somebody has visited a particular website called Bollywood.com. And they visited it not just once, not just 5 times, 10 times, maybe they visited 100 times or 1,000 times. Now they come to a spiritual talk like this and they hear about the Bhagavad Gita. And after hearing about the Bhagavad Gita, they think, hey, I want to know a little bit more about it. So they open their browser and they type B. And what happens? Yeah, they wanted to go to Bhagavad Gita at maybe bhagavad-gita.com, but as soon as they type B, what happens? Hollywood.com. Now, is their device their enemy? That they want to go to bhagavad-gita.com, but the device is taking it to Bollywood.com? No, the device is simply a device. So the device, it does not have any vice. The device may be used for vice, for doing bad things. But the device itself has no vice. The device is value neutral. Okay, because we have visited that particular site repeatedly, that's why it just goes to that side automatically. So like that, say for example, for somebody, as soon as they're bored, they're tired, they feel down, their default way to get a break is maybe to go to Instagram, go to YouTube, go to social media and start surfing. That is their default. So as soon, oh, I'm feeling bored, immediately go there. Now, if that's what a person has done, or I'm feeling down, I just want to eat some food, or I need a drink. Now, that's the default that is there for them. So the mind is like that. When we have done a particular action repeatedly, automatically the mind proposes that as the solution to a problem. A little prompt. So here, just the typing of the B gives that. Now, if you have somebody has visited a lot of times, even if you type Y or L, still Bollywood.com coming up. Any letter it might come like that. But these are triggers. So now, if the person doesn't want to go to Bollywood, there's no use in getting angry with the device. Hey, why did you Bollywood.com? I don't want to go there. Now, with respect to the device, we can just erase our history. But we can't do that with respect to the mind. The samskars can't be just erased so easily. But suppose there's a device where maybe there's some parental control or something like that where we can't delete anything. But then if we don't want to go to Bollywood.com, what we need is, we need to type the full bhagavadgita.com. So we have to type 12 letters. And for some people, typing 12 letters, it's like drinking 12 liters of Karela juice. How 12 letters? I can't type that. Well, it's not that difficult. It's possible. It requires some effort. And if they type that once, if the diligence means just keep repeating. Do it second time, do it third time, do it fourth time. And maybe sometimes you type B and you forget to type further and it goes to Bollywood. Okay, as soon as you realize it, change it, go to bhagavadgita.com. Now, if you do it 5 times, 10 times, 20 times, maybe 50 times, and after that, when you type B, what will come as the autocomplete? bhagavadgita.com. So similarly with respect to our mind. Now, if we just keep getting angry, why is Bollywood.com coming? Why is Bollywood coming? Why is Bollywood.com not stopped coming? Oh, don't focus on that at all. So like that, whenever we feel anger, whenever we feel craving, whatever we feel, you say, why is this feeling coming? Just because that feeling is coming doesn't mean that our mind is bad or we are bad. It's just a result of what we have done in the past. But right now, just focus on doing the positive. Okay, maybe, whenever I feel down, if I hear some nice soothing kirtan, I feel good. Or if I hear some good talks, I also feel uplifted by that. So then keep that kind of kirtan, keep those kind of talks readily accessible. And as soon as you start feeling down, just make some effort. Don't think, oh, I will not visit social media, I will not eat this, I will not drink this. Don't focus on the negative. See, focusing on what we will give up or what we'll stop doing is like trying to delete that Bollywood.com from our history. That's very difficult to do. But even if we can't delete Bollywood.com from the history, we can put bhagavadgita.com in our history. Like that, don't focus on giving up negative habits. Focus on developing positive habits, and over a period of time, those positive habits will fight with the negative habits. See, the conditioning of the mind may be very strong. It's like, say, suppose there's a small child, and that child goes to school, and there is a giant bully over there. And that bully is terrorizing the child. The child may think, okay, tomorrow I'm going to the gym, and tomorrow I'll develop 6 packs, and tomorrow I'm going to beat the bully. Well, you go in front next day, what is going to happen? In one day, you're not going to develop a big fist. So instead of trying to fight with that bully, if we try to fight with that bully, we will end up beaten. But instead, try to make friends with another big person. If you try to befriend another powerful person, then this person can fight with that person. Isn't it? So this bully is like our bad habit. If we try to fight a bad habit ourselves, what happens is we just get beaten up. And when we get beaten up, what we think? We end up thinking, I can never give this up. And then I give up trying to give up. But instead of that, focus on developing a good habit, a healthy habit. And if we do that, just focus on doing the positive as much as we can. And when you keep doing that, you'll find that things will improve. The impressions in the mind will change. In all the religious traditions of the world, there are rituals. Now, the word ritual sometimes has a negative connotation. Don't be ritualistic. You're just doing this again and again and again. But the word ritual also has a positive connotation. Oh, there is one Silicon Valley CEO, he's written, my daily morning rituals. I wake up every day, I journal, I meditate, I do this. So rituals are regular practices. So rituals basically, they tap the power of repetition. Repetition, the power of repetition in what? The power of repetition in transforming the mind. So when we repeat something, what happens by that? By that repetition itself, the mind gets transformed. So when we chant the Hare Krishna mantra repeatedly, say, I'm not able to focus, but still we are chanting. So if we chant regularly, then whenever we are triggered, whenever we are provoked, immediately the tendency to chant will become. So if we come regularly to programs like this, we may say, oh, I come here, I hear something and I forget it. And I go back and I'm the same person. Well, not exactly the same person. At some level, even if there is no immediate change in the behavior, change in practically in our life, but a positive impression is created. If you make it a habit, just do something positive. Whenever I feel down, I just make it a habit. Maybe every day I'll chant some rounds. Every day I'll visit the temple. Every day I will read some spiritual book. Even if it's 5 minutes, the quantity is not as important as the regularity. We just do that, we are essentially reprogramming, reconditioning the mind. And in this way, each one of us can change the samskars within us. Instead of negative samskars, we can have positive samskars. And when that happens, our mind will become our friend. So when that happens, we will be amazed at how much we can do. Say, for example, if I am here and my mind is here. So what happens is, I want to go in this direction, but my mind wants to go in this direction. And then many times we may end up functioning basically at maybe 20%, 30%, or even 5% of our efficiency. Because so much of our energy is going away in the internal fight itself. But suppose our mind changes. That means what is happening is, I want to go to bhagavad-gita.com, but bollywood.com is coming. But so energy is going inside because there's so much distraction and distortion. But when our mind becomes our friend, what happens is, we want to go in a particular direction, and then the mind also changes, and the mind also wants to go in that direction. And when this happens, we'll find not only 100% of our efficiency, we may go beyond what we thought of that 100%. So that is the way actually to empowered living. Empowered living means things that are important for us, the mind also gets that is important for us. Mind reminds us. Instead of reminding us of distracting things, the mind reminds us of meaningful things. And that is how we can move from being otherwise toward being always consistently wise. So I'll summarize what I discussed today. I started by talking about the first point was the mind, the model of the self. To understand the mind, we talked about the three-level self that is described in the Bhagavad Gita. There is the soul, the mind, and the body. So depending on how the mind functions, we may be wise or we may be otherwise. So the mind basically acts as a pathway for consciousness to go outwards. So that's how the mind works. That's how the mind is meant to function. Then we talked about the functioning of the mind, how it is meant to function. Then we talked about the malfunctioning of the mind. How does the mind malfunction? Two ways: distract and distort. Distract means inside us, the mind might just go in this direction, somewhere away from what is important. You want to focus on this, but the mind distracts us. And distort means that something is small, but the mind makes it big. I gave the example of the alcoholic telling his son, I won't drink less, you have to eat less. So this is distract and distort. And the last part I discussed is, how do we get the mind to work for us? So make the mind our friend. You remember the two things? Distance. So distance means, I talk about externally, we create some barriers, some boundaries. Whatever are our triggers, we create some barriers. So don't stay, if you're alcoholic, don't stay next to a bar. You tend to over visit certain sites and have some apps which regulate that. And then internal distance, I talked about questions, self-awareness questions. What am I doing? Why am I doing? And how am I doing? Asking questions like this can create barriers for us. Can create a distance internally between us and our mind. And the last part was diligence. So we get the mind to become our friend by not fighting against the negative, but fighting to create the positive. So just repeat the positive. Even if there is a relapse into the negative, doesn't matter. Just keep repeating the positive, and by that, what will happen is new impressions will be created in the mind. And those new impressions then will automatically fight against the bad impressions, the negative impressions. So instead of trying to fight against a bully, you try to befriend a bully. Not befriend a bully, befriend a powerful person. So we focus on creating a good habit, not so much fighting against the bad habit. So rituals and religious practices that involve rituals, they tap the power of repetition. And if you just have that diligence, just keep doing the positive, our mind will change from opposing us to energizing us, from exhausting us to energizing us. And that is the way to empowered living. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna. Are there any questions?
Thank you. The last story you are mentioning about the speakers, specifically discussing that you are mentioning about how we can overcome that by because my question is that when the trigger happens, example, when you are like so at that time, it is very difficult to actually understand what I'm doing.
Yeah.
So how practically
Yeah, I don't think we can immediately change that. There are certain conditionings which we can't change immediately. That's why we have to prepare in advance. Last time when I was with that person, I got triggered. Last time when I was in this situation, I got triggered. So in future, what can I create to expect that in the situation itself we will be able to control ourselves? That's demanding too much from us. That will happen, but it will take time. So it's better to be. It's like last time that bully beat me up. So next time I don't want the bully to beat me. But you're not going to grow that strong immediately. So that's why preparation in advance is important. This is a very important point that sometimes in self transformation or in mind management we tend to rely too much on willpower. I will not do this, but this can be damaging. Willpower is required, but more than willpower, sometimes we just need support. Support means what? That we need to create help for ourselves. If the mind is conditioned, suppose say my hand is fractured, and because my hand is fractured, I can't lift heavy objects. And if I say I just have willpower and I lift a heavy object, well, I will lift a heavy object, and then I will become a heavy object that others will have to lift. Isn't it? So, okay, for this point, because my hand is fractured, I need some support. Maybe I get a trolley and then I carry it on the trolley. Maybe I can push that. So just like we treat, if my hand is a fracture, I don't feel guilty that I can't lift it. It is not an issue of willpower. It's an issue of common sense. So similarly, have that objectivity that, yeah, in these situations, I will not be able to control this. And just prepare in advance. What can I do? Okay. Yes.
So I want to ask about distraction. Like nowadays, many go a feeling called as breakup. So what happens? They had a breakup, and along with that relationship, they have to carry on their studies, look for the parents. So how to deal with that stuff? Because when you or anyone had a kind of breakup, so there are random thoughts, thousands of thoughts running in our mind. So we have to focus on one thing. How to go along with that?
Yes. See, the word is break up, but what happens is break down. So, I'd say two main things. Again, don't focus on the negative, giving up the negative, focus on the positive. So, to put something behind us, we have to put something ahead of us. And now that doesn't mean immediately rush into a new relationship. Now, that will be that is not something which we want to put ahead of us. But put something that is important for us, something that is valuable for us. Maybe, yeah, okay, that incident happened. That is painful. That was distressing. But let me give myself something which is valuable for me to do, but it's also relatively relishable, enjoyable for me. So, in general, if you look at the things that we do, see, there are some things which are good for us, and there are some things which feel good to us. Like there's some food which is tasty, and there's some food which is healthy. Now, if these two circles were completely overlapping, life would be so easy. Then if all the tasty food was healthy, then we could have just lived so easily. But it's not like that. But that doesn't mean that these two circles are completely non-intersecting. There are some things which are good for us and which are also we feel good for us. That means are good means they are valuable. They will add value to our life. And feel good means they are relishable. They are enjoyable. So find out something in the intersection of these. So for example, say if you like music, Then maybe learn some instrument, learn some singing, maybe learn some spiritual songs, some kirtans, some bhajans. Try to find something in this intersection of the enjoyable and the valuable and focus on that. So if it's in the intersection of these two, then it's easy to fill our mind with. See, we can't empty our mind. In general, we can't drive any thought out of our mind, but we can crowd that thought out. So drive out means what? That if say this is my mind, my consciousness, and here there is this thought. I try to drive it out. But what happens is, in trying to drive it out, I'm thinking about it. And in thinking about it, it ends up becoming bigger. But instead of that, this is driving out. This just doesn't work. But instead, we can crowd it out. Crowd it out means that this thought is there, but try to get something else into our mind. And this is, we bring it from outside in. This is the intersection of what I said, the feel good and the is good. And then gradually, as we become more and more habituated to it, then that will fill our mind. And as that fills our mind, then this unhealthy thought will be driven out of it. Okay? Thank you. Very good.
I have a question. How do we more consistent life? So, I'm reading a book called Meditating. So, I'm reading a book called say, tools
I was talking. So the question is how to be more consistent in developing good habits. All of us are consistent, but we are consistent in being inconsistent. Yeah, that is, I start something, I do it for some time, and then I give it up. So now the way to develop consistency is basically, I mentioned this in today morning's class also. I talk about it that we need external and internal support. So to develop consistency, one very helpful thing is association. Externally, if you have association, if I start something, I want to start reading a book regularly, then try to find out somebody who's also reading a book regularly or who would also like to read. And then maybe just form a WhatsApp group or something and just share every day. No, I read 15 minutes today. I read half an hour, like that. It is actually the support that we can get by just having other people doing the same activity that we are wanting to do. It's simple, but it's extraordinarily helpful. That's association. That's the external side of it. And the internal side is evaluation. Evaluation, generally what happens is that we simply judge ourselves and say, I don't have willpower. I cannot do it. No, evaluation means we need to evaluate or estimate our own capacity and our own inspiration. So if my schedule is very busy and I decide every day I'm going to read 1 hour, or maybe if we have read one book in 1 year, and now I think I every day read for 1 hour. We're not even used to reading 5 minutes every day, assume. Then 1 hour might be too much. So we evaluate our capacity. And there's no shame in starting small if it's required. This is my capacity. This is what I can do at this stage. So evaluate. It's like if somebody wants to go to the gym. Okay, if I had never lifted weights and I suddenly decide I'll lift a 60 kg weight. Well, don't lift the 60 kg weight. Wait. Wait, right? Lift some smaller weight. So evaluate our capacity. What can I do? Instead of seeing failure as a failure, see failure as as information about our own capacity. So, it's a simple change. See failure as information about our own capacity. Now, one problem that comes up is that we may feel, no, my capacity is much more. I can do much more. We sometimes, because of our ego, we don't want to acknowledge that my capacity might be so small. It doesn't matter. It will grow gradually. And we don't have to tell the world about it, but just see it that way, understand our capacity. And then we have to evaluate also our inspiration. Now, sometimes some people, they feel inspired by attempting something big. Okay, then you look at the big picture. And then, okay, if I just read 5 pages every day, this book is 500 pages. That means in just 100 days, I can complete this whole book. Oh, 100 days is 3.5 months. Okay, by this particular date, maybe this is the day of my birthday. This is New Year. This is this. By that time, I'll complete the book. So sometimes looking at a big picture, that gives us inspiration. So we need to evaluate our inspirations. That's why sometimes if we focus only on willpower, I have willpower, I don't have willpower. Well, what can I do if I don't have willpower? Well, no, we can evaluate our capacity and we can evaluate our inspiration. So sometimes some people, they may decide, okay, I'll do a lot, but for a short time. Instead of deciding that I'm going to do this lifelong, they decide that for this 1 month, I'm going to do this much. For 1 month, I'm going to read every day for 1 month. And then we may have to rearrange our schedule or something like that. 1 month, I can do this. And then after 1 month, we can evaluate, is this sufficiently inspiring me now? Or maybe I want to develop some other habit. This habit is not really that important for me. So try to, as I said, have curiosity. Instead of simply thinking in terms of control, have curiosity. And that way, we can go towards greater consistency by association and by evaluation. Okay? Thank you. Yes.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu. First of all, I learned lots of life lessons from your session. I also learned that how our mind works. So my question is that what really happens after mind when we chant Hare Krishna Mahamantra? Because after chanting mantra and after hearing it, we become more focused and we become more calm, right? So what is the main reason behind that? And what is the state of our mind after chanting Hare Krishna Mahamantra?
What is the state of the mind after chanting Hare Krishna Mahamantra? Well, chanting Hare Krishna Mahamantra is like watering a seed. It may not lead to any immediate change. Sometimes it may lead to. But basically, mantra chanting, its effects can range from many levels. At one level, we may get peace. Sometimes we may feel peaceful. Sometimes we may not. The mind is quite restless. So sometimes we may get pleasure. Sometimes we may not get pleasure. So these two are to some extent uncertain. Uncertain immediately. Eventually, it will happen. Gradually, it will happen. But there are two things which are much more important. One is we will get purification. That just by chanting, the impressions inside the mind are changing. We are reprogramming, reconditioning the mind, like replacing Bollywood by Bhagavad Gita. So like that purification is happening. And along with that, another thing that happens is purpose. Purpose means that chanting is not just uttering of mantras. Chanting is an understanding that Oh Krishna, please engage me in your service. We understand that the world is not just a disorderly mess. We are not a disorderly mess. There is a higher plan for the world, and there is a higher plan for us. And we are seeking to be a harmonious part of that plan. Now, suppose we are working in a big company and we don't even know what we are supposed to do. This person tells us do this, that person tells us do that. We think maybe I would like to do this. Subtle level starts giving us that sense of the bigger picture, that I have a purpose to my life. And you say, I want to serve Krishna. What does that mean? Simply that I am part of a bigger plan. So these two convictions, that there is a bigger plan and there is a part for me in that bigger plan, that both these convictions come, and then our purpose becomes clearer, it becomes stronger. And that's how we'll find that chanting will start improving the quality of our life. So the mind. So thank you very much. Srimad Bhagavad Gita ki, Srila Prabhupada ki, Gaur Bhakta Vrinda ki, Jai Gaur Premanande.
Hare Krishna.